Quality. I knew him from the days of my extreme youth because he made my father's boots. He lived with his elder brother in his shop, which was in a small by street in a fashionable part of London. The shop had a certain quiet distinction. There was no sign upon it other than the name of Jessler Brothers, and in the window a few pairs of boots. He made only what was ordered, and what he made never failed to fit. To make such boots as he made, seemed to me then, and still seems to me, mysterious and wonderful.
The author knew Mr. Jessler since his boyhood days. Mr. Jessler was a shoemaker who made boots for the author's father. Two little shops were let into one and had a common signboard as Jessler Brothers. This shop was in a small by street in London. There was a certain distinction in this shop. A plain board with the name and no sign. In the window side, only a few pairs of boots were hanging. One particular thing that must be noticed is that Mr. Jessler made boots only if it was ordered, and the one he made was so perfect in fitting and also lasted for a long time. According to the author, the shoes made by Jessler Brothers were mysterious and wonderful.
I remember well my shy remarks one day while stretching out to him my youthful foot. "Isn't it awfully hard to do, Mr. Jessler?" And his answer given with a sudden smile from out of the redness of his beard, "It is an art." It was not possible to go to him very often. His boots lasted terribly, having something beyond the temporary, some essence of boot stitched into them.
One day when the narrator stretched his youthful foot to Mr. Jessler and asked him if it was hard to make the boots, Jessler smiled and said that making such boots was an art. It was not needed for the narrator to go to Mr. Jessler's shop very frequently, as the boots which was made by Mr. Jessler lasted for a longer period of time.
One went in, not as into most shops, but restfully, as one enters a church, and sitting on the single wooden chair, waited, a guttural sound, and the tip-tap of his slippers beating the narrow wooden stairs, and he would stand before one without coat, a little bent, in leather apron, with sleeves turned back, blinking as if awakened from some dream of boots. And I would say, "How do you do, Mr. Jessler? Could you make me a pair of Russian leather boots?"
The two Jessler brothers owned the shop. They did not keep any servants. They did all the work by themselves. On entering the shop, one would find nobody there, only a wooden chair on which the customer would sit and wait. Then one of the two brothers would appear with a tip-tap sound of his slippers. He stood without a coat, a little bent, in leather apron, with sleeves turned back, blinking as if awakened from some dreams about the boots. Now the narrator requests Mr. Jessler to make him a pair of Russian leather boots.
Without a word he would leave me, retiring whence he came, or into the other portion of the shop, and I would continue to rest in the wooden chair, inhaling the incense of his trade. Soon he would come back, holding in his hand a piece of gold brown leather. With eyes fixed on it, he would remark, "What a beautiful piece!" When I too had admired it, he would speak again, "When do you want them?" And I would answer, "Oh, as soon as you conveniently can." And he would say, "Tomorrow fortnight?" Or if he were his elder brother, "I will ask my brother."
Mr. Jessler moved away without a word. Then the narrator sat on the wooden chair, inhaling the smell of the leather. Soon Jessler came back holding a piece of gold brown leather. With his eyes fixed, he said, "What a beautiful piece!" The narrator also admired it. Then Mr. Jessler asked the narrator when he wanted the shoes. The narrator replied to Mr. Jessler that he can do it according to his convenience. Mr. Jessler replied that he will make it ready by 2 weeks.
Then I would murmur, "Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Jessler." "Good morning," he would reply, still looking at the leather in his hand. And as I moved to the door, I would hear the tip-tap of his slippers going up the stairs to his dream of boots. I cannot forget that day on which I had occasion to say to him, "Mr. Jessler, that last pair of boots creaked, you know." He looked at me for a time without replying, as if expecting me to withdraw or qualify the statement, then said, "It shouldn't have creaked." "It did, I'm afraid."
Then the author wished him thank you, and by the time he moved near to the door, he heard the tip-tap sound of Mr. Jessler's slippers going up the stairs back to his dream of boots. Once, the author told Mr. Jessler that a certain pair of boots creaked. At first, Mr. Jessler found it difficult to believe it. He expected the narrator to withdraw his statement. He also said that it shouldn't have creaked. But the author said that it creaked.
You got them weird before they found themselves. I don't think so. At that, he lowered his eyes as if hunting for memory of those boots, and I felt sorry I had mentioned this grave thing. Send them back, he said. I will look at them. Some boots, he continued slowly, are bad from birth. If I can do nothing with them, I take them off your bill.
However, when the author insisted about the boots, Mr. Jessler asked him to send them back. He promised either to correct them or to take them off the bill. But Mr. Jessler seemed hurt at the complaint. The author felt sorry for having mentioned it.
Once only, I went absent-mindedly into his shop in a pair of boots, bought in an emergency at some large firm. He took my order without showing me any leather, and I could feel his eyes penetrating the inferior covering of my foot. At last, he said, "Those are not my boots." The tone was not one of anger, nor of sorrow, not even of contempt, but there was in it something quite that froze the blood. He put his hand down and pressed a finger on the place where the left boot was not quite comfortable.
Once the author went into Mr. Jessler's shop. At that time, he had on his feet the shoes bought at some other firm. That day, Mr. Jessler behaved in a strange manner. He took the order without showing the leather. At last, he could not control himself. Pointing to the author's shoes, he said those were not his. Then, he put his finger on the spot on the shoe and said that the left boot did not fit him properly.
"It urged you there," he said. "Those big firms have no self-respect." And then, as if something had given way within him, he spoke long and bitterly. It was the only time I ever heard him discuss the conditions and hardship of his trade. "They get it all," he said. "They get it by advertisement, not by work. They take it away from us, who love our boots. It comes to this, presently, I have no work. Every year it get less. You will see." And looking at his lined face, I saw things I had never noticed before. Bitter things and bitter struggle, and what a lot of grey hairs there seemed suddenly in his red beard.
Mr. Jessler said that he knew it hurt the author there. He was right. Mr. Jessler, for the first time, opened his heart before the author. He complained about those big firms. He was full of resentment against them. He said that those big firms did not bother about the quality of their shoes, yet they got all the business. He was bitter that in modern times the advertisement had become important. The quality of the work did not seem to matter. He told the author he had almost completely lost his customers due to the same reason. For the first time, the author noticed signs of bitter struggle for survival on his face.
As best I could, I explained the circumstances of those ill-omened boots, but his face and voice made so deep an impression that during the next few minutes I ordered many pairs. They lasted longer than ever, and I was not able to go to him for nearly 2 years. It was many months before my next visit to his shop. This time it appeared to be his elder brother, handling a piece of leather. "Well, Mr. Jessler," I said, "how are you?" He came close and peered at me. "I am pretty well," he said slowly, "but my elder brother is dead."
Looking at Mr. Jessler, the author tried to explain the situation, but by seeing the sad face, the author ordered many pairs which lasted for a longer period of time. The author had no time to visit Mr. Jessler's shop for nearly 2 years. It was after many months that the author went to Mr. Jessler's shop again. It appeared to be the elder brother whom he met that day. A closer look revealed that it was the younger one. He told the author that his elder brother had died. The author was shocked. He felt pity for the younger brother.
And I saw that it was indeed himself, but how aged and worn. And never before had I heard him mention his brother. Much shocked, I murmured, "Oh, I am sorry." "Yes," he answered, "he was a good man. He made a good boot, but he is dead." And he touched the top of his head, where the hair had suddenly gone, as thin as it had been on that of his poor brother, to indicate, I suppose, the cause of his death. "Do you want any boots?" And he held up the leather in his hand. It's a beautiful piece.
The author felt sorry and said that his brother was a good man who made good boots. Mr. Jessler touched his head, where the hair had gone very thin. He held a leather in his hands and asked the author if he needed any boots.
I ordered several pairs. It was very long before they came, but they were better than ever. One simply could not wear them out, and soon after that I went abroad. It was over a year before I was again in London, and the first shop I went to was my old friend's. I had left a man of 60. I came back to one of 75, pinched and worn, who genuinely this time did not at first know me. "Do you want any boots?" he said. "I can make them quickly. It is a lack of time."
The author ordered several pairs of boots, but he couldn't use them as he soon went abroad. After a year, the author was back to London. Now he went to see his old friend of 60 but appeared to be 75. Did you guess who his friend was? Yes, he is Mr. Jessler. But by now, Mr. Jessler turned old and could not recognize the author. Mr. Jessler asked the same question. "Do you want any boots, sir? I will do it in a slack of time."
I answered, "Please, please, I want boots all around, every kind." I had given those boots up when one evening they came. One by one I tried them on, in shape and fit, in finish and quality of leather. They were the best he had ever made. I flew downstairs, wrote a check and posted it at once with my own hand. A week later, passing the little street, I thought I would go in and tell him how splendidly the new boots fitted. But when I came to where his shop had been, his name was gone.
The author ordered all kind of boots, but received it after a long time. All the boots fitted him perfectly. The shape, the quality of the leather was the best the author had seen. Soon he ran downstairs and wrote a check and gave it to Mr. Jessler. A week later, he passed the street. He thought to stop near Mr. Jessler's shop to just say that the boots fitted him perfectly. But when he reached the shop, the name board was not there.
I went in very much disturbed. In the shop there was a young man with an English face. "Mr. Jessler in?" I said. "No, sir," he said. "No, but we can attend to anything with pleasure. We have taken the shop over." "Yes, yes," I said. "But Mr. Jessler?" "Oh," he answered, "dead." "Dead? But I only received these boots from him last Wednesday week."
He was disturbed to see that the name of Mr. Jessler was gone from the shop. Inside, he met a young Englishman. He told him that he had taken over the shop. On inquiry, he said that Mr. Jessler was dead.
"Ah," he said, "poor old man, starved himself. Slow starvation, the doctor called it. You see, he went to work in such a way, would keep the shop on, wouldn't have a soul touch his boots except himself. When he got an order, it took him such a time, people won't wait. He lost everybody, and there he'd sit, going on and on. I will say that for him, not a man in London made a better boot. But look at the competition. He never advertised, would have the best leather too, and do it all himself. Well, there it is. What could you expect with his ideas?"
According to this new owner, Mr. Jessler was a failure in business. The failure was caused by his insistence on quality. He would not let anyone share his work. Consequently, when he got an order, he took a long time to execute it. The customers did not like to wait, so he lost all his customers. Then he never advertised even. He did not even bother about the competition. He always used only the best leather. So, though he made the best boots in London, he died of starvation.
"But starvation, that may be a bit flowery, as the saying is, but I know myself he was sitting over his boots day and night, to the very last you see. I used to watch him. Never gave himself time to eat, never had a penny in the house. All went in rent and leather. How he lived so long I don't know. He regularly let his fire go out. He was a character, but he made good boots." "Yes," I said, "he made good boots."
The new shop owner said that Mr. Jessler worked hard and also used to sit day and night to complete his work in the best manner. He also said that Mr. Jessler did not eat on time and never had a penny in his house. What he earned all went in rent and leather. He wondered how he lived so long. He also said that Mr. Jessler was the character who made good boots. The author agreed that Mr. Jessler made good boots. Here ends the lesson.